Welcome to the latest edition of Kernels from the Cornfield. No huss, no hulls, no shucks. News with a dash of commentary to spice up your fare for Tuesday, July 15th, 2014. They walk among us. They are family, close friends, neighbors, stand in the pulpit, in the classroom, conduct Bible studies, in daycare centers, work carnivals, and for amusement parks. They are child predators. While we are concerned with the humanitarian crisis of children flooding our southern border, we have a crisis affecting our own children subjected to abuse by the perversion of adults. Law enforcement and companies say more tools are needed, with legislation from Congress to aid in defending children from predators being hired in industries in which children are a mainstay. Famous parks such as Disney, Universal, and SeaWorld have hired people who have been arrested and convicted of preying on children, though not during the course of employment. Will Congress react to this crisis quicker and more effectively than what it is doing with the children from Central America? Read the extensive coverage of this problem at CNN.com. We'd rather fight. That is what Hamas said, with rockets being fired into Israel overnight after Israel agreed to an Egyptian proposed ceasefire. Now that the Israeli cabinet is debating a ground invasion of the Gaza Strip to root out the terrorist group Hamas. Activists detained. Should have seen it coming. After being vocal about being undocumented. An undocumented immigrant. Even making a CNN documentary about his status. Pulitzer-winning author Jose Antonio Vargas was detained at an airport in McAllen, Texas today. Vargas, in his public battle for immigration reform and to get the U.S. government to provide a way for illegal aliens to obtain legal residence, seemed to be taunting the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency and border guards to arrest him. What did he think would happen? Why do today what you can do in May? There is a movement in Congress to postpone solving the shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund until May of 2015. Forget about the fact that the fund will run out of money in August. As I reported recently, money for the fund comes from the 18.4 cents per gallon tax on gasoline that has not been raised since 1993. Since that time, motorists are driving less and buying more fuel-efficient vehicles. The fund provides around 25% of the money for states to repair roads and bridges. But Congress is not completely heartless. The legislators are looking at borrowing money from a fund for dealing with leaking underground storage tanks, new fees from U.S. Customs facilities, and something called pension smoothing. Pension smoothing allows companies to delay contributions to pension plans. This allows the government to collect more in taxes from those companies since the pension contributions are tax deductible. With less than 12 workdays left to act before the summer recess and the fund going broke in August, will Congress act? This just in. The U.S. House of Representatives voted a short while ago to provide temporary funding for the Highway Trust Fund. A similar bill is waiting action in the Senate. Cornfield marriage law shot down. The 7th District U.S. Court of Appeals has struck down an Indiana law that barred secular humanists from officiating at weddings. The 3-judge panel that heard the appeal ruled that the Hoosier law favored certain religions over other religions, such as Buddhists, and those with no religion, such as secular humanists. The panel noted that while Buddhism, which has no clergy, were out of luck in having a person of their religion officiating a wedding, a priestess of the Church of Satan could preside over a wedding. The state tried to convince the judges that secular humanists could get ordained by the Universal Life Church and then be allowed to be marriage celebrants. The court found the state's defense laughable, to require those without religion to lie and pretend to be religious to meet the requirement of the state law. This is a win for the First Amendment and freedom of religion, and making no law which places one belief above another. Remember the Peace Corps? I can well recall when President John F. Kennedy rolled out a program he hoped would foster peace and goodwill for the U.S. with the people throughout the world. That program was the Peace Corps. I recall later during the mid to late 1960s how many opposed to the U.S. war in Vietnam turned to the Peace Corps to keep from being drafted and sent to the rice paddies. In recent years, the Peace Corps has waned in popularity and in its ability to attract young people to go into impoverished countries to spread goodwill and share knowledge with the people to help them become self-sufficient. The Corps is currently at its lowest level in over a decade. To counter the downturn in applicants, the Peace Corps has announced it is streamlining the application process. Applicants have had to put their lives on hold for over a year, waiting for a decision on whether they had been selected to be one of America's Goodwill Ambassadors. The new process will hopefully take no more than 6 months. The Corps is also going to beef up security and provide greater assistance to protect women from being subjected to abuse in the countries where they serve. Another great program which seems to have marred in the bureaucratic swamp of red tape. Equality March. The Badger State, Wisconsin, and the Hoosier State, Indiana, will have appeals by federal judges who struck down their state's ban on legal recognition of long-term same-gender couples combined and heard by the 7th District Court of Appeals on August 13th. The cases were combined and put on a fast track for hearing on Friday. A request by Wisconsin for an additional 5 days to put its arguments together to overturn the federal judge's ruling was denied. Rather than having a 3-judge panel hear the appeals, the states have requested that the entire 10-member court listen to the arguments. It is expected if the ruling goes against the states will join Utah in appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court. In light of today's ruling that Indiana is picking favorites among religions allowed to officiate weddings, it will be interesting to hear how the court comes down on the issue of same-gender equality. Missing deadline. Remember all that ballyhoo from Secretary of State John Kerry about reaching a deal with Iran to halt or at least delay the Persian nation's nuclear ambitions? Seems Iran won't meet a critical deadline hammered out in the deal. This was something members of Congress warned would happen months ago. That is why the Congress passed contingency sanctions if Iran did not hold up its end of the bargain. The deadline is a short 5 days away on July 20th. Kerry admitted today that there are some very real gaps between where Iran is at and the U.S. at this point in time. These gaps may be too wide to bridge within the time allotted for a permanent solution to curb the possibility of Iran building a nuclear weapon. 106%. That's the percentage of the gross national product that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the federal budget will claim within 25 years. That's even with shrinking deficits and government spending dropping to the lowest in over 70 years. The CBO cites the culprits primarily to be increases in needed payouts by Medicare and Medicaid. The CBO says the government will not be able to take in enough to offset the added burdens from the 2 government-run health care programs. By the way, this is in addition to what the government keeps borrowing and will owe back to the Social Security Trust Fund. Priority skew? There are some who are saying that we are more focused on the children at the border than our own American children. Some are pointing out the violence children in Chicago or Indianapolis are facing every day, yet receives no national outcry. The old saying is that charity begins at home. Are American political leaders putting their sights on the children from Central America while ignoring the plight of our own children, primarily in metropolitan areas of the nation? Are we straining at camels when we should be swatting at gnats? Or is there a balance we can find where we can take care of our own and give the proper due to meeting their needs and be a good neighbor while helping those from outside our borders? Just a few questions to ponder as we sit at our computers or our televisions or play on our smartphones this evening. That's what caught my attention for Tuesday, July 15, 2014. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of Kernels from the Cornfield. I'm Mark Ivy. Good evening.